Hey, how you guys doing? Incredibly excited today. First of all, we're back. We've had tremendous technical issues, especially with Adam Kuber. Had him on twice, but we weren't able to manifest the interview. So, first of all, welcome to the morning warm-up. It's morning somewhere, just not here. Want to say hello to all our friends across the globe. We are international from the way it seems. So thank you for being here with us. Look, guys, I'm insanely excited today because we have on the one, the only, Todd MCFarlane. Not only that, but technically this would have been our 25th issue, right? A milestone. But because I had to finesse Adam and Adam's interview, and Adam will be our 25th, so Todd's our 24th. But anyway, just think of it as a milestone issue because we have Adam on. We have Todd on, and Adam will be on for the actual milestone. I'm sorry, I've forgotten how to speak English between now and the last time that we did the show. So before getting to Todd, I need to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion for my own show, Marvel's Storyboards, that's streaming across all social platforms with new episodes released every Thursday. If you guys have seen it, we've had on some amazing guests. We've had on Hugh Jackman, Natalie Cordova-Buckley, Christian Borle, and tomorrow is really no exception. Tomorrow, I have on the one and only Johnny Weir. Johnny Weir, an absolute icon of sports, an icon of fashion, just iconic in every way possible. And it was so much fun to do this interview, with the exception of the fact that Johnny was going to try to teach me how to skate. It did not go well. So if you're a fan of stories, if you're interested in how many different kinds of stories can be told by how many different kinds of people in so many different ways, check it out. I'm really proud of the show. Tomorrow, Thursday, Johnny Weir. While I'm at it, I also want to give out a big shout out and thank you to Tony and Roxy Castle, Ben Garst, Eric Enright, and the entire crew at BFD Productions. They did an amazing job making the show and me look as good as I possibly can. Do you guys know how much work that takes to make this thing look good? And finally, also big thanks to our sponsor, State Farm, for making it all possible. And I got one more thing for you. Back in 2013, we launched a little thing called Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Tonight, after 7 wonderful seasons, it comes to a close. And I hope all of you tune in and catch the final episode. But more importantly, wrong graphic. Here we go. More importantly, I want to send out thanks to Joss Whedon and Jeff Loeb, as well as our brilliant showrunners, Jed Whedon, Marissa Tancheron, and Jeffrey Bell, and the entire cast and crew that have been with us from the start. You guys, you've accomplished something incredibly special. I was so proud to be just a small part of it. And I hope you guys are as proud of it as all of us at Marvel are. So let's get down to it. You guys know this man as one of the greatest Spider-Man artists of all time. One of the founding members of Image Comics, the creator of Spawn, an entrepreneur, a rebel. And by the way, now you could learn about his road to success, all the bumps along the way, in a new documentary on Sci-Fi. And here it is. If you haven't seen it, it's called Todd MCFarlane, Like Hell I Won't. It's a great title. I love it. And you should definitely catch it. It's a wonderful documentary, and it gives you a lot of insight into the mind of Todd and what it takes to really, really grind it out and make it in this industry and in any industry. So look, without further ado, let me bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Mr. Todd MCFarlane. Todd, how are you, man? How's it going?
How you doing out there, Joey? How you doing?
Doing good, man.
I'm on the West Coast. You're out on the East Coast, so I'm glad we could share some time here with the fans.
This is great, man. And Todd, we were talking a little bit before we started the show. Usually when I do these interviews, I have my stock list of questions, and we had so many great fan questions that I really want them to drive this, because I know your relationship with the fans. I totally relate to it as well. I love them, and we both talk about these are the people that pay our rent, right? And without them, there is no Spawn, there is no Marvel, there is none of this stuff.
There's no career.
There's no career. Yeah.
Right.
And I remember it was earlier this year that you were doing a panel for Spawn 300 where you greeted every fan at the door. That was earlier this year, was it not, or was it last year?
Yeah, I've done that in the past, because otherwise you're just up on stage waiting for them to file in. Why not say hi to them as they come in, right?
Yeah.
So, I've been around long enough. You've been around celebrities. It's always interesting to me, Joe, that there are some celebrities that are put off by their fans, which are essentially giving you a life. Without them, like, we're just self-indulging at that point. So it's odd to me that sometimes I'll do something and people like give you way more credit for it, because I'm shaking your hand as you come in. I guess I could just stand in the corner and be a big shot. But it goes, those sort of small, easy things go a long way to the fans, right? I mean, I don't get to talk yet till they're settled, and I get to basically say thank you to them and look them in the eye, and that may be the only thing they got out of that whole hour panel was I got to shake Todd's hand coming in. Okay, cool. And it's easy. It's easy for me to do. I like it. I like doing it, right? I don't have a posse. I don't like to hang out and sort of be in the corners. I want to. Here's the thing that's interesting, Joe. You know this. I don't do a lot of shows, but it's a little frustrating to me when I do that the shows want to protect the celebrities, if you will, right? For lack of a better word. And so they say, well, Todd, we'll bring you in and we'll only give out like 100 tickets, and then you can take a 3-hour break and whatever. And my attitude is, I'm there to meet the fans, right? I'm not there to relax. I'm there to work. I'm a workhorse.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to go to the airport and I'm going to drive to some place and I'm going to eat away 2 days, 3 days that I could be doing work. So I could be doing the content that you and I, his fans, would buy, then I want to touch as many people as possible. Instead of you limiting, because the easier part is I don't do any of that. I stay home, I put 2 things up on Instagram, and I hit 500,000 people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you want me to interact with fans, I can do more and not leave my drawing table than to get on a plane. So if I'm coming to a show, to me, if I could run everyone, you line them up until there's nobody in line, and I'll stay there till midnight if I have to, right? Yeah. Because this may be the only opportunity for somebody who may be a fan of yours or mine or Jim Lee's or Greg Capullo's, and that moment may not be there for another 10 years for them. I think we need to make ourselves accessible.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny when I go to San Diego. I remember this happened on several occasions. I just leave my hotel, I walk down the street, and I go into the convention center, and a fan will come up to me and they're like, "Wait, why aren't you surrounded by people?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just walk through the convention and meet fans." And I guess they're used to maybe there was some celebrity behavior out there with the bodyguards. I remember I did a show in Toronto. And it's a great show, and they were being really, really helpful. And I get there, and there are 5 bodyguards for me, 5 of them, yeah. Todd. Yeah. I'm sure you experienced this, and I'm like, guys, what?
It's silly and it's undue, because what happens is it brings attention when you don't need it, right?
I think it makes things worse.
Conventions are so busy right now that I think Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks could walk by most people, and people are just trying to get to the next place, right? Yeah. So we're okay. I keep telling people, like, don't worry about us. We're okay, right? Yeah. I still squeeze my toothpaste in the middle like everybody else. It's okay, right? And if somebody happens to want a quick picture, that's okay too. We can just do it on the fly and enjoy the time that we get to have with them, which is at times limited. Here's the frustration. I remember years ago, I'm going to date myself. I used to go to San Diego and I'd be out in Artist Alley. And I remember this one year, and I'm not picking on Frank on this story, but because I think this played out many times. Thank God for program books. But it wasn't sort of sophisticated. It was. And I was sitting next to Frank Miller. And we, again, when you're in Artist Alley, you're having chats or whatever. And Frank would sort of come and go and come and go and come and go. And there's this young kid, I'll never forget him. He was about 12. And he was this giant Frank Miller fan. And Frank would leave, and then the kid would come, and he goes, "Hey, is Mr. Miller here?" And I went, No, he left. Well, do you know when he's coming back? No. And so he's like, "Okay, I'll just check back." And for the next 3 days, that kid came back 6 times.
Wow.
But it happened to be the 6 times Frank wasn't there. And I remember sort of scolding Frank a little bit. And everybody that was there, I go, "Look, you get to go take a pee break and sleep in and go have food and all those other things, but just take a piece of paper and fold it and just say, 'We'll be back at 1.' Because then that kid will know to come back at 1 and will catch you." And that kid for 3 days came back and he got 0 autographs from Frank, right? Yeah. And all it took was us to just put up a little piece of paper. For me, and this is what I do, I just never leave, right? And so what happens is, and this is a secret for all of you people out there, I think I've stolen some fans from people because they just go, "Oh my God, Mark's not here, Quesada's not here, Frank's not here."
I'm always there.
I guess Todd's here, we'll get in his line, right? So they were just getting my line by default, and then I go, "Hey," and you be nice to them, and sometimes you make a fan out of them. So, and the secret to that is because I was just doing a CGC signing at the beginning of the year, and I said, "Hey, I don't eat and I don't go to the bathroom." I think they thought that was a joke. We had a couple days. I got there at 7 a.m. and I didn't leave till midnight. Right? Figure that one out. That's 17 hours. I didn't leave that table. They had to bring in shifts of people because they got hungry and had to go to the bathroom. I'm going to give you the secret, ladies and gentlemen. This is easy. People are like going, "How do you go 17 hours and don't go to the bathroom?" This is easy. This is biological. If you don't put anything into this hole, nothing comes out any other hole.
Right.
So I don't eat. I don't eat. And if I don't eat, I have no need to go to the bathroom. I can sit there all day long. Now, the question is, why don't you need to eat or drink? That's a whole nother conversation. Drives my wife crazy. But anyways, like I said, the drivers. I wasn't a NASCAR fan, and these people, like, they literally, the drivers would go and do their time trials on the day of the time trials, and then they'd come in and they'd be in these gatherings with fans, and then they'd say, "Hey, Tony Stewart, hey, Jeff Gordon, you're on deck to go do your next time trial," and they were literally minutes away from doing their job. And it wasn't like I got to put my game face on like a lot of sports people. And I so admired them. And they knew that if they were driving the car that had the Tide logo, they knew that the people who were buying Tide, the consumer that was buying Tide, eventually gave Tide corporate money that could be put on their car. And they understood the full circle. And they were, and from my eyes, I never saw one of them ever bothered by having to basically interact with crowds of fans in the middle of their time trials, which I thought was staggeringly amazing.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of comics, right? There are a few people that are just are not into the whole fan experience, but I think for the most part, most comic book creators are really, really good about this. That time that I had the 5 bodyguards, right? So I told the purveyor of the convention, I'm like, "Listen, I can't do this." And he's like, "Look, you have to." I'm like, "Give me one guy, just one. If it's a legal thing, blah blah blah. One guy, right?" So he gave me one guy, and even that one guy, when a fan would come over to like, "Hey, can you?" No. I'm like, no. People could come and ask me for a signature. This guy would follow me to the bathroom. It was hysterical. But eventually we became good friends.
Here's a heartbreak of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think if you're asking me, and my opinion's the same as everybody else's, I think if you start ranking the comfort level of what's going to happen here with the pandemic, I think gathering huge gatherings of people on the move, not like at football, where you could sit and don't move out of your seat. I'm talking a convention where you is going to be at the bottom of the list. Sadly, I think there's going to be 10, 20 steps before we get back to that. I think we'll have people watching sporting events because at least you're stationary before you start getting into that, and that's frustrating. The upside is for people doing what you're doing and lots of others. I'm going to be getting something too. I think it's necessary to interact with our fans, and so if they're going to stop doing the shows, then we have to figure out ways to basically engage the fans in another way. I think it's our responsibility to them to keep engaging with them.
Well, let me ask you a question, because so I was watching a ball game the other day, and one of the announcers was talking about handshakes, and he felt that handshakes will be a thing of the past. They're gone. They will be extinct. Nobody will be giving handshakes anymore. What do you think?
Yeah, that's interesting. When's the last time I did a handshake? It's interesting.
But I'm saying even after
but
this is over.
But the thing is, you can do the fist bump, and you can do this. There's a lot of other things you can do.
You can bow. You can do,
that will get you there. Yeah, I don't know. I know it's frustrating on a lot of levels, but we just have to meet this challenge like anything else. We're fortunate enough that, and I run, the majority of my business is basically I say I'm in the paper and product business, and plastic and paper. That's what I am. Just like if you go to the grocery store, you want paper or plastic. I make toys and I make comic books. Luckily, those are small buys. Comic books are $3, $4, $5. Toys, 20 and under. Most toys. Those aren't the thing people are cutting back on. As a matter of fact, I'm seeing, as bizarre as it is, Joe, I'm seeing an uptick in both those categories. People are not going to shows. They're not getting on airplanes. They may not buy a brand new car, especially those that unfortunately lost their jobs or got laid off. Yeah. So, but you don't begrudge people toys. Like, I've done some interviews about toys. Parents will never begrudge their children a Christmas gift, a birthday gift. Like, you will not buy something for yourself. You will not buy something for your wife or your husband before you say, we're not getting anything for Susie or Johnny, right? Mm-hmm. So we're in a business that will weather it pretty good. Here's the other thing, Joe, that this money is getting reallocated, right? So I was asking, I grabbed a group of people who work for me. I got a bunch of 20-somethings working for me. And I asked them this question because I was curious, because I shut my offices down in March. So I happened to be in there, and there was a couple of them that were in there for something. And I went, let me ask you a question. You can't go to the restaurants at that time. You can't go to the bars. So that's money that you're not spending. You can't go to theaters. And they were all geeks. They were going to all those movies, the Marvel movies. You can't get on an airplane. So you can go to the convention that costs you money, for the hotel to go to the convention that costs you money. Like, that's thousands of dollars. Like, are you seeing money in your bank account differently? And every one of them said yes, right? And now what they're saying is that they're spending some of it on guilty pleasure, which means that their geekdom, the things that you and I grew up on, and people may be listening here, that they're going, I used to talk myself out of that $40 item. I'd buy the $20 item. But now, since I'm at home and I'm not spending it on the other stuff, I can just go online and I can buy that $40 item. And so we're fortunate, unlike, maybe people who are making movies and the airline companies and TV. It's like, not only are they buying geek stuff still, but they're saying, wow, I just saved $800 in airline fees to go to San Diego. Maybe I'll spend half of that on more geek stuff, right? Cool, good for us. So,
yeah, no, it's really interesting. It's an interesting observation. So, Todd, I want to talk a little bit about the documentary, right? Because I thought it was really, really great, and sort of.
So I was on it. I don't know if you saw your performance, Joe.
Look, I'm a humble man, Scott. Todd. I just I am on it, but that's not why I love it. Although I do like my parts. But the truth of the matter is, there was such great little bits of business that I learned from it. You know, I know a lot about your career. You know, I was sort of breaking in as you were sort of exploding at Marvel and stuff. So I got to see it at a distance early on, and then we got to meet down the road, and you know, we've connected here and there, and there was one time where you spoiled a World Series moment for me, but we'll talk about that later. But there was some great things there, like when you were talking about the webbing, right? The webbing you created for Spider-Man, and how there was so much resistance to that, and how often you broke the panel borders and stuff. And it hit me because by the time that I got into the business, that was kind of the norm. It was already, you guys had already sort of really made that more of an acceptable part of what is considered commercial comic book storytelling, regardless of how you use it. But I found it interesting that there was a lot of resistance towards you breaking panel borders and using the twirly webbing, the wonderful, you know, design element of the webbing. And I thought to myself, because I had worked with Jim Shooter prior at Valiant, and I wonder if those rules, because, you know, when they start giving you rules, right, as a creator, you go, oh man, come on. And if you, and especially with rules, when you ask why, right? Yeah. If you ask why enough, eventually you'll get to one or two things. One, either there's a real reason why, right? You go, oh, okay, I get that. Or, well, it's just kind of what I heard because I heard it from so-and-so. So I'm wondering if these were like leftover Jim Shooter rules, because Jim had very specific rules. Yeah, that's what I thought.
I'll go back, right? Yeah. Because again, it was before your time. So I'll lay out, at least from my perspective, I'm just giving you my perspective of what was happening. When I was collecting as a young kid, Marvel always had way cooler looking comic books than DC, right? That to me was just a given. They had the better artists, they had the cooler characters to me. There was more energy, there was more kineticness, there was more melodramatic. The DC comic books, they had a lot of vets on there, and God bless them all, right? But, you know, for my taste, when I was young, as much as in hindsight, I appreciate the effort that Kurt Swan did on Superman, it wasn't super sexy the way that John Byrne and George Perez were drawing, at least to my, at that point, 16, 17, 18-year-old eyes. By the time I come onto the scene, and this is maybe the mid-'80s, what had happened is, and I knew it, I knew it because eventually I got to the point where I was able to ask Jim Shooter. Jim Shooter was very strong in terms of what he wanted and had some quote-unquote rules. And they were valid because they were for clear storytelling. I understand why Jim Shooter did and said what he said. But what ended up happening by the time I got there was that those rules got taken to such an extreme that became a fault. And by the time I got to Marvel, because I'd gone over to DC, I did Infinity Incorporated, and I came back. And I remember on day one that somebody said, hey, Todd, we'll give you some work, but you can't do anything extravagant. I mean, literally right out of the gate.
Wow.
Right, which was basically, you know, grid your pages like two up, two in the middle, two down, the grid page, and anything short of that. And I remember asking a couple editors, and they were all almost in unison with this. I was saying no, and when I would ask why, they would say, well, because Jim Shooter doesn't like it. Jim Shooter doesn't like it. Jim Shooter doesn't, and they kept invoking his name, and some of it I understood, Joe, but it was almost everything. And I went, what? You're saying just that is going to interfere with storytelling? Doesn't make any sense. And so there was this one fateful day, I was doing the Hulk. Bob Harris was my editor. And Bob Harris was guilty of this too. And we were going to go talk to Jim Shooter. And I forget why, maybe because I hadn't met him and my star was starting to grow a little bit. And we're going there, and, you know, Bob warned me, goes, whatever you do, don't ask him about all those things that you and I are talking about artistically. And I went, no, don't worry about it, Bob. I'll be okay, right? Lesson number one, ladies and gentlemen, whenever somebody of power asks you to do something, always say yes, even if you're not going to do it. Just makes it easier. Because if I had said to him, I'm going to ask Jim Shooter. It would have been a long-winded conversation. It's just easy to go, no, I'm not going to, Bob. So we get into the room, we have a nice conversation, we shake hands, we talk. And I could tell by the way Jim Shooter was talking that he was about clarity of storytelling. And then when we got up to leave, I went, Jim, just before I go, just a quick question. Is it okay if I have my characters come out of panels? Is it okay if I overlap panels? And I could see Bob Harris shoot me the look like, Todd, you said you weren't going to do this. Because I go, I don't know if you know this, Jim, but the majority of your editors, not Bob Harris, not Bob, he's a good guy, right? So I covered him. But they say you can't do any of the, and the look on Jim Shooter's face, I knew that's what was going to happen. He was like, what are you saying my editors are doing? Now, Jim should have been aware of this just by leafing through his books, right? Going, why are they so boring? But Jim said exactly at that moment what I knew he was going to say. He said, no, Todd, I didn't say you can't do overlap panels. I'm saying you can't do bad overlap panels. I'm not saying you can't have people coming out of panels. I'm saying you can't do bad coming out of the panels. What they must have heard, he didn't say this, but what those editors heard was can't do overlap panels. They didn't hear in a bad way, right? And he sat there for the next 5 minutes and drew on a piece of paper the difference between a good overlap panel and a bad overlap panel. A good arm coming out and a bad arm coming out. And this is how simple it was, Joe. And it's like, no duh. If you're going to have Spider-Man's hand coming out, then make sure that the panel here, there isn't a person standing here, so it looks like this hand is grabbing this person, right? If you're going to have overlap panels, then make sure that there's nothing in this panel that's relevant that you're going to then overlap and hide. Like, don't hide the evidence. Don't hide the evidence. So if you want to overlap it into the sky, I don't care, Todd, or in the ground or whatever, in a pile of cars, I don't care, but not the key stuff. Bingo. I knew it. And that was the moment. I just went, I'm off to the races. I don't know about anybody other artists. I'm off to the races. And Bob wasn't able then to say, you can't do that, because I go, what are you talking about? We had the conversation with Jim. We'll go back in there and ask him. And we started to go. So you've heard the old story of Stan Lee saying no more purple, right? That old story.
Yeah, I heard that was completely fabricated. I mean, I don't know. I have heard that. I heard green. I heard it was no green.
No, it was the purple pants. There was purple pants on the Hulk.
Oh, right. Yes.
So what happened was that somebody came by, right? I mean, think about it. You got an open door, and somebody's walking by, and they're like, you can't hear what's in the conversation. Blah, 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 blah. No purple. Blah, 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 blah. And you didn't pick out anything. And what that conversation is that somebody had done some coloring on some background of some book that wasn't even the Hulk. And they used purple in a horrible fashion. And Stan was just like any of us that get sort of wound up. And he was basically explaining why it was bad, and it basically must have said something. And if they're going to keep doing it, then I don't want any of that damn purple in there. And all that somebody heard walking by the door was no purple. So then they get a Hulk cover, and he ends up eventually asking him, why is his pants not purple? And they had taken it to an extreme of, you can't have purple any place because Stan's going to be, and he was like shocked too. It was like, I wasn't even talking about the Hulk.
Right.
I was talking about something else and using purple in a unique fashion someplace else. And this is what happens in all corporate sort of entities, in which people have to now spread the message as it gets, and it's sort of that campfire thing that goes around. But that's, Joe, that's where it was. In hindsight, for a guy like me, it was perfect timing. Yeah. Thank you, comic book gods. Because somebody like me who wanted to do some flamboyant stuff or cool or stuff that 16-year-old Todd would want to see, all of a sudden it seemed like a bigger move than it should have been, because the books used to sort of look like that when I was collecting,
Mm-hmm.
but they had sort of gone into a malaise. And so good on me, because people thought I was being way more creative than it was. It's just that there was a bit of a lull before that.
Yeah, well, it definitely opened things up. You know what I mean? And you started with the webbing, and you started with the, the really dynamic posing. But it's something that this is something that was quintessential to Marvel Comics very early on. I mean, all you have to do is look at Kirby's stuff, and it's funny because I had a similar story with Shooter, but it wasn't as direct as yours, where he was working. He was running Valiant Comics, and here I'm a colorist. There's a bunch of really young people working there, and every once in a while, if we were working late, he would sit down and sort of talk to us about the rules of storytelling. And I remember him saying, and he won't remember this story because I was literally just fourth guy in the background, right? And he says that Jack Kirby never ever, as dynamic as he was, he never ever broke a panel border. I don't know if that's true, but let's assume it is. And he said, he always kept it within the frame of of the grid, all the action. It's not unlike when George Lucas or Steven Spielberg. This is like 1990. Yeah. Spielberg, they don't break the precipice of the screen in any way, shape, or form, and yet things look dynamic. And I raised my hand and I said, well, that's kind of because the technology doesn't allow for it. But I'm pretty sure that if Spielberg could break the precipice of the screen and the technology allowed, he'd probably do it. Jim did not answer. He just sort of gave me that Shooter glare, and I was and I sort of sunk into my seat.
Here's the reality of that conversation I've had with people. If I was Jack Kirby and could draw like Jack Kirby, I probably never would have had anything go out of the panels either, right? Yeah. We all have to realize the limitations of our own skill set. So I knew that I was an average to above average artist, especially at the beginning, and I knew that I was going to have to, being in a sea of 1,000 other artists. In the back of your mind, you're saying, how do I get noticed? Right. How do I get noticed? And there's no shame in that. I mean, again, somewhere in every one of our careers, you should want to do it. So I knew that a little bit of design, and I had, I went and played baseball, but I also got a degree, and my degree was in graphic designing. So I used some of the graphic designing elements on the page just to make it a little bit different, just so at the beginning, Joe, it was completely to hide my below average drawing. That's a fact. If you look at the early issues of Infinity Incorporated, those pages are, you look at the actual drawing, they're not very good. What I did is I distracted your eye with all this crazy page layouts that was way more flamboyant than anything I ever did on Spider-Man. But by the time I got over to Marvel and I started sort of asserting this, then that little sort of artiness became part of what started making my style. And so I just kept it going. But if I could have drawn like some other people that I'm completely jealous of right out of the gate, I probably wouldn't have had to try to come up with these tricks. And that's all they were. They were tricks, right?
It's interesting. Neil Adams, I remember having a conversation with Neil where he said that your style is directly attributed to the things that you don't know how to draw. And I thought that was wonderful because I'm like, I draw certain things stylized because and by the way, if you weren't stylized, you'd be a photorealist, right? If you knew how to draw everything. So it's that inability to draw something and making up for it in a way that makes it readable on the page that I think creates a style. And then as you improve as an artist, right, and you get better and better, that style then gets, I think, mixed into your understanding of how things actually work on the page. Yeah, sure, of course. Yep. Oh yeah, tell me about it.
Monday, and they say, hey, we need the cover by Thursday. You have to figure out how to do it, right? So I'll give you an example quickly off the top of my head that unfortunately isn't a Marvel book, but I did this one cover for Batman, and they ended up doing a statue of it recently, Batman 423 or whatever it was, and it's basically just Batman in a big giant black cape, and he's hugging this woman,
Oh.
and all it is a cape,
Yeah.
a head, and this woman's shoulder. Now, does it look cool? Of course it does. Did I draw it that way and design it that way because I thought it would be sort of striking? Of course I did. Was I also aware that they needed it in a day? Yep.
Yeah.
So that design came from it was a byproduct of they needed it quickly, and I wanted to do a Batman cover, and this was going to be my chance. I wasn't thinking about it. So recently they did a statue of it, and they're going, Todd, what was the underdrawing? I go, I never gave that a second thought what the underdrawing was. I was just graphically drawing stuff. Why?
Yeah.
Because it gets you through deadline. So you had a graphic up there of, I think it's the first cover of Venom, where Spider-Man is laying, in the foreground there. A lot of stuff that you will see in a lot of my work, there's a lot of debris, right? So the thing that you see at the bottom of that cover, the debris, I would do a lot of that. Why? Because you can never draw wrong debris. Nobody's ever going to say, Todd, that piece on the left should have been more to angle like this, not like that. Like every line is right. And when you're got a deadline and you got to get through pages, not having to go back, not having to be precise, like doing an apartment building, that's got to be a little bit more precise. That debris is easy. Those speed lines behind there, that was just lines that gave the illusion of detail without me having to be precise. I just put a bunch of speed lines. I called them my Akira lines. That's where I got it from, this comic book called Akira.
Sure.
And I put it back there. So all of a sudden they're going, oh my God, look at all the detail you do. And it's like, detail, what are you talking about? There's no background on that cover. There's no real drawing on the floor. Spider-Man is basically a head, a hand, and a bit of a chest. You can see a little bit of his leg. You can't see the other one. And even Venom in that particular case, you can't see anything from the knees down, right? So there's a process when you're doing monthly books. And I understand when I go down Artist Alley, there's a lot of people that are cover artists and they don't have this deadline. But I had to take everything that I was doing and compress it into 30 days. So when the hand was coming out of the panel and I made the panel smaller, that was I thought looked cool graphically, and B, it meant that I didn't have to draw an inch around it. And an inch is still time because you got to draw, that's time. And so my style was a culmination of doing art and meeting the deadline. And Joe, I started as a penciler. 30 days, Todd. You remember? 30 days. You got 30 days. Okay. Then I said, I want to ink my own stuff. And they went, fine, that's 2 jobs. You have 30 days.
30 days.
And then I go, hey, it'd be cool if I could write my own stories because I could put characters in it. And they went, yeah, you can write. You got 30 days. I had to figure out how to do 3 jobs in the same 30 days. So I had to create shortcuts for myself so that I could meet those deadlines, because otherwise I'm no good to a monthly company if I can't do a monthly.
Right. Now, I want to ask you a question because I remember hearing this and I never actually asked you if it's true. I once heard that you were, again, to keep up with the deadline, you were on a flight, I don't know where it was from, but you were inking on the plane. Is that true?
I've inked, Joe. I did.
I thought it was.
Here's where I did a lot of inking. I was doing Spider-Man. I was living on a place called Vancouver Island. And to get it to FedEx, because you couldn't just digitally download it, I had to go to the airport. And the airport was an hour and 15 minutes away. I had it down. I would get my assistant, who for the most part all he did was be my driver. And I go, I've got an hour and a half drive. And I still have to finish this page. So it seems horrifying. And it should be to some extent to anybody. But what I did was, I wasn't drawing Peter Parker. I wasn't drawing Spider-Man. I wasn't doing the webbings. I left.
Right. Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm. Mm-hmm.
Because we're neurotic, we wish it could be, but in hindsight, you and I could show pages. I could show you my ugly, and you go, "Oh yeah, I'll top that, Todd," and then we'd go back and forth with our ugly, right? What I'm trying to say is that the reason that people like a certain artist, let's say in this case Todd MCFarlane, isn't because of every line, every page, everything. It's because of the body of work that I've done. So I now have the luxury, you now have the luxury, that there will never be one page, one panel, one cover, one issue that will forevermore define you. It's not going to have, like, a fan either likes your stuff or they don't, right? And so some of the young artists that have been in the business 10, 12 years, I keep telling them, your reputation is made, like, you don't have to slave over every single panel. What you have to do is just resonate 3 to 5 times in an issue, and they will go along for the ride on it, the rest of it, right? And you've got a deadline, and this is why you guys can't do a deadline, because you think that the panel with Aunt May serving crumpets at the dinner table is as important as Spider-Man fighting Doc Ock. It's not. It's not. Right? I keep saying to people, I remember The Dark Knight. There are pages in The Dark Knight that you and I could close our eyes and replicate pretty close, right? You remember them holding the general with the flag and the smoking gun, right? Batman on the horse, him and Robin jumping across, the female Robin jumping across the sky with clarity. Gun to my head, with the life of my children at risk, what did the previous page look like? Don't know.
No.
Have no recollection. And so that I don't remember is actually good. That's why that page mattered, because it might have been 2 pages that were blandish, and then bam. And this is the business we're in. This is what Jack Kirby understood. The melodrama. We're on Broadway. Everything is big and powerful when you get to the moment. But Aunt May doesn't need bravado when she's serving water. Spider-Man against, Kraven the Hunter, give me bravado at that moment, right? And stop torturing yourself on some of the other stuff. Save it for those 3 pages. Don't worry about the Aunt May. I'm not saying do a bad job, but I'm saying you don't have to be so meticulous with the lattice and the lacing on the curtains. Move on and get there, because if you can't do a deadline for a deadline company, you're no good. You're no good.
Yeah, it's in the documentary you attribute, or you compare it to the hook of a pop song, right? You'll always remember those 2 or 3 lines from a really good pop song. Sometimes you remember the lyrics, the verses, the middle 8s of the pop song. Maybe not so much, unless it's a Beatles song. You remember everything.
How many words do you think people remember from Frank Sinatra singing "New York, New York"?
Right, of course, yeah.
That might be it. Right? And then they mumble, and then we get to, and everybody joins in. That's it. That's what comic books are to me. And you go, I love that song. Do you remember the words? I don't, but I love that song.
Love the song. And when you hear it, you're like, and by the way, when that song starts, you wait in anticipation for the hook, and then eventually the crescendo of the song. Yeah.
I'll give another secret away too, for some of the artists. Look at the screen. Look at my screen, right?
Hang on. There we go.
If I no, go back to the split screen, because this is more like a panel page right here. Okay, so if me, Todd, right now, if you consider me to be Spider-Man, this panel, right?
Right.
So I'm going to draw a little bit here in the corner. I'm going to draw a little bit here in this corner here. There's a little bit here, and then they're going to put some balloons up over here. And as long as those 2 things right here are buildings behind the big Spider-Man that's swinging, you're going to fill in the rest of the city. So people would come up to me, Joe, and say, "Oh my gosh, Todd, you drew so many buildings. We love the cityscapes." And I'm like, "Yeah, show it to me," right? I would draw a big Spider-Man, and then I would just tuck a little bit of city under his armpit, a little bit between his crotch, a little bit over the shoulders, and I was out. And because it looked good, you filled in all the rest that was where Spider-Man was, and you thought I was doing way more than I was, right? So good that my style ended up doing what I needed it to do, which was to get people to assume they were getting value, and I had a style that I enjoy drawing, and part three, I could meet a deadline, right? All three of those needed to happen to have a career that you could basically do for 20 years.
Yeah. Todd, I've got two more questions for you, and I want to get into the fan questions because it's some really good ones. So, you played baseball, I played baseball. There aren't a lot of people in comics that are athletic, but there are some, right? Have you noticed, I remember in college, I was taking a history of animation course, and they talked about the early Disney animators and how those guys and gals were tremendous athletes, to the point actually where they played in, I'm not sure if it was a baseball league or a softball league, but they won the championships all the time. And there was this comparison saying, the thing that makes them good animators is the fact that they are physically active and that they're good athletes. Now, it's clear in your work, right, that your characters have motion and there's athleticism. And I think that comes out of the fact that you know how the body moves, right? Because you move it, right? And you play sports. I noticed the same thing. Before I ever met John Romita Jr., I looked at his artwork and I'm like, this guy plays ball. And then when I got to talk to Johnny, he does play ball. Do you find that when you see action in art, that the artist tends to be athletic in some way, shape, or form?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. To your point, it's way more true in me making toys.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Okay.
Because when I did all those sports toys, but to me, I understand torque, right? Yeah. And torque, for people who don't know what that means, that means your body is tight at certain spots. Mm-hmm. So if you think of it as the kid who's 7 years old who goes and gets his school photos and he does the fake smile, it's not real. You're doing a simulation of it, right? So anybody can do a pose, right? Anybody can do a pose and go, okay, I'm going to do it. So I remember I used to get my sculptors to sort of do, this is a quarterback throwing, arm is up,
right?
Doing whatever. To me, starting lineup, Kenner was doing the starting lineup sports. That's all they were doing. They were just simulating poses. Mm-hmm. They weren't real poses. They were not real poses. And so what I would do is I would actually go into the pose. I did a lot of the posing myself, where I would, to get into the pose, what are you talking about, Joe? You think I got into the pose by just going, okay, arm up, I'm going to do a quarterback. No, right. I would literally go under center, because I played quarterback in high school. I would go back, do the motion, and then freeze myself. And when I froze myself, I could feel where the muscles were tight, where I was twisting, where the shoulders were. And that was the piece of it. It's about torque. I want you to now take it towards dragons and monsters, because I want them to have a shoulder a little bit higher, and I want that hand to be here, and I want it to be down. And I want to feel like they're alive as much as I possibly could. In comic books, where it comes in is that we are drawing on a 2D piece of paper, and we have to create the illusion of 3D. Yeah. And the way you do that is you create planes. So here's what a plane means to me. You can draw Spider-Man's arm straight, use my arm right here, right? Mm-hmm. I can do it like here, straight. Or I can come at an angle. I'm going to go at an angle. Then I'm going to kink it, and then I'm going to do this. And now I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to make 6, 7, 8, 9 planes just with the hand. Now, what if I made the hand in front of my face? It's going to give the illusion that the hand is closer to camera, because why? You can't see my face. You can't see my face. And then if I've only got a piece of my arm in the back here, a little bit in the back, and it's smaller, then you're going to go, oh my God. And then if I put my foot up in front of the arm, then all of a sudden that's even closer. Yeah. I'm creating depth, and that's all you and I have at times, is to create the illusion of depth. Yeah. This is why capes are good, and this is why Spider-Man's webs were so important. That since he did not have a cape, how could I create depth? One, with his posing. Did I care about anatomy? Never, not for 1 second. And then I put the webbing around that, all those planes I created with his body. And then I put the webbing going all through him and around, and I was able to create this illusion that there was more volume there than was actually there.
And motion too. That's
Yeah, motion, right. That everything was constant. Constant. It was a frozen moment in time that you caught them. Yep. So again, these are things, Joe, that you and I, as geeks, we can lament about, like artistic choices. The only thing that needs to matter to the reader is it cool. That's it. That's all they got to get. They just got to go, I like that book. Why? Yeah. It doesn't matter why. They just like the book and they move on.
Yeah. It has to be cool ultimately. So the other question I have for you, Todd, is that you're drawing digitally now as well, right? So I mean, I picked up digital a while ago. First of all, how do you like it? How often do you use it? And then also, I want to ask, because on the documentary, I saw you. Do you draw in Photoshop or in SketchUp? Photoshop. So I saw you using a Photoshop brush that was like a web brush, and I want you to send it to me because it looks awesome. It'd make my life easier doing. No. I was showing him, going, man, if this existed when I was a kid, right? Oh my God, it's. I'm gonna geek out for just a minute. You just go to Photoshop and you go down to stroke, right? And as long as you do the stroke and the outside of the stroke is black and your inside color is white, then whatever you draw, it just creates an outline. Oh man, I was looking at them. Wait! How did I figure this out?
No. When you go to your layers at the bottom, just hit stroke.
Yeah.
Right?
Cool.
It's just. Yep, it's an easy one. It's an easy trick. I keep telling people, good thing the 50-year-old Todd didn't get hired to draw Spider-Man, because he would never have looked like he did, right? Mm-hmm. I was just dumb enough, when we're young, we're strong, we got nothing but time and energy. And I got dumb enough to sit there and go, what? He's got 3 circles going around his face? I'm going to do 8. And then he's only got 3 things going on his chest. I'm going to do it 20. And then I'm going to add this. And then I'm going to do this stupid thing and do these webs where I'm going to have one strand go around that you could actually follow it. And I'm not going to cross the lines, right? Mm. I mean, maybe the first couple issues I did, but then I got very diligent about it. And then I went, no. I'm going to do it. And I created all this stuff that took hours just to do the webbing on his costume. I literally would set aside one day a week to finish the webbing on all my pages that I worked on that week, because it was ridiculous. So thank God that the 20-year-old Todd got the Spider-Man, because the 50-year-old Todd would have figured out I would have kept the black costume. Let me just tell you that. Yeah. I would have said, nah, I like that black costume. Let's just do it. I don't have to do any webbing on it. So
how do you like digital though? You enjoying it?
The digital?
Yeah.
Took me about 6 months, and then I figured out that you could customize your brushes. Mm-hmm. And once I figured out that I could customize the brushes, then you can figure out your look. You also can set the settings that basically tell the computer you're left-handed, which I am.
Yeah.
And so I can angle it, and then I can squeeze it and whatever else. So here's why I like it. And I understand all the reasons why people don't like it, because then you don't end up with, original artwork at the end of it. So I get that piece of it. I can fill in blacks with a click of a button, right? I have it so that you can build these things, Joe, where you can do 4 commands in one. So I can create the marching ant, the lasso, fill in the blank, it fills it, and it gets rid of the marching ant, 1 button, right? Mm-hmm. So I can go, wham, bam, wham, bam, wham, bam, and I'm filling in black. That used to take hours. Matter of fact, I used to get most of the people on the block to do it, because I go, I don't have time to do it. Your black and my black look exactly the same. But you can also zoom in, and now you don't have to be nearly as precise as you used to have to be, because again, your paper doesn't move. Yeah. So now you can do stuff. I found early that what I needed to do was train myself to not zoom in so much, because I was going so close that your eye literally cannot see the detail once it gets printed. I mean, it almost hurts your eyes trying to focus on it. Yeah. So I now have a rule that I try not to go past 50 to 65% in terms of the size. But here's the thing, that brush that when using a crow quill or a brush, sometimes it doesn't quite catch or eats the paper, right? You never miss a line. You never miss the pen is always loaded and it's perfect. And when you're dealing with deadlines, and we're back to the same word again, right? That those 100 times when I was doing it on paper where it didn't catch, that could have been 100 lines on a piece of paper that might have been me getting 20 minutes closer to deadline. Here's why deadlines are so important, not from a corporate point of view, but for me. I got a wife, and I love that woman, and I got children, and I'd like to have my children like me for the rest of my life, and I'd like to be married to my wife forever. And so if you can't figure out a way to balance that, you're going to get in trouble real quickly. And it's one of the things that amazes me with young artists, Joe, that I say, hey, I'm going to start giving you some of these tips on how to draw less and make more. I'm going to pay you more money, but I need you to draw less. And they think it's a trick. They think that I'm testing them. And they won't adhere to what I'm saying. I'm going, no. And eventually what I have to do is get their wife on the phone or their girlfriend or somebody else and say, hey, just so we know, this is how much this person loves you. I'm saying I can cut 2 hours out of their day and they could make more money, but they've chosen no as an answer. I don't know what to read between that and your relationship, but I got to tell you, the ladies, they understand that very clearly. Like, let me have a talk with them. Let me have a talk with them. Right. And here's why, Joe, let me go real quickly. Here's why I say what I'm saying. I'm not saying give less to the readers. I'm saying understand you're on a basketball team and you've got 5 people, right? And here's the 5 people: writer, penciler, inker, letterer, colorist. We all have a job to do. And what happens is there's too many pencilers that think they're playing golf or tennis. They're only one person. And this is how it goes. They draw Superman, and then they spend all the time drawing here, and then right up above, they spend 25 minutes, and they put an air conditioning unit up there. And it's got rivets, and it's got fans. It's super cool. An extra 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then they're going to give it to my inker. And my inker is going to do a great job. He's going to do some rendering. He's going to do Superman's face. He's going to do it. Then he's going to get to the air conditioning, and then he's going to do some noodling on it. It's going to be super cool. He's going to spend an extra half an hour on it. Then the colorist is going to come in. He's going to go, oh, that air conditioning unit's been there for 10 years. I'm going to put some texture on it, whatever else, and it's going to be super cool. He's going to spend 20 minutes on it. And then I'm going to take a word balloon. I'm going to put it fucking right over all of it.
Right.
And so you just wasted 3 people's time when you could have been on to the next panel because we've got a deadline. Don't you understand, young artists? There's a thing called balloons in comic book. There are actually a bunch of artists that don't. I have to remind them on a constant basis, Joe. It's staggering to me. And I'm saying if you just remember there are other people on your team, you can actually give some of the weight to somebody else, and you can go and have a balanced life and spend time with people that you care about or get some sleep or be healthy. That's all I'm trying to say. Come on. Come on.
So Todd, with respect to the because I had that same issue too, where I was zooming in too much, and then by the time I got to actual, I'm like, I just wasted so much time noodling something that's not even going to.
But you can put it on the side of a building, and it'd be awesome.
Yeah. So the trick that I've started to force myself to do is to set my pen size at a lock size where I know this is as thin as I can get on an actual size. So when I zoom in, it'll immediately read as like, whoa, it looks muddy, and no, it's not. So then when I get back, so I lock my pen into a particular size. And even though, because it's hard not to zoom in, right? It's habitual after a while. So I find that keeping the pen locked allows me to realize, okay, this is how much detail is actually going to only print on this particular page. Just a tip if you want to use this. So listen, let's get to some fan questions, man, because I got a bunch of them here. So let's see here. My Todd questions. All right, these all come from Twitter and Facebook and all over the place. So what are you showing off here? Nice. All right, cool. You're not showing off. There it is. Okay. All right, let's see here. This comes from B Hunt. Come on, Joe, it's McFarlane. You'll be asking one question, maybe two, and Todd will fill the rest of the time with answers. I wish you did more media like this, Todd. What I just said is why you're so awesome in interviews. So that's just a nice thing from behind. Let's see.
Joe, I'm going to interrupt to his point. Yep. I do panels, and they always want to give me moderators, and I go, I don't need a moderator, right? Because all they need to do is say, Todd, how are you doing? And that's it. I'm good for an hour. So
you're gone. Yeah.
I'm a bit. My wife will say, not a bit, Todd, a lot. I'm a bit of a ham bone. I just like to have fun.
Yep. No, I hear you. All right. Let's see. From Patrick Blaine, my question: if he could do it over, would Todd have traded his comic and toy career for a successful professional baseball career? I love that question.
The young Todd would have said absolutely in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Because sports were such a big piece of my life. The mature Todd now understands that no matter what would have happened in my career, every athlete, sort of like a golfer, has a 5 to 15 year window, and then you're done, right?
Yeah.
They teach this to athletes, that they say you will not be a professional athlete way longer than you will be a pro athlete. And so now as a comic book artist, I understand the concept that I could do this as long as I have my health and my eyesight, that I could do it till the day I die.
Yeah.
Right. Which is pretty spectacular. From an art point of view, you and I can draw forever. So
yeah. And even when you can't draw, I mean, you could still speak. You could talk. I mean, look at Stan Lee, right? Stan was, viable until his last days.
Yeah.
Just,
the one again, I tell people I probably was on stage with Stan more than any other human being. The one great thing about Stan, he was basically like me. I would say, Stan, how are you feeling today? And he would be gone for an hour. The thing about being 90 plus years old is that you have 1,000 stories to tell. And Stan could have been up on stage for 10 hours and never bore you, right? And so the one thing there's two things that old people have. I'm an old guy now, so you're getting there. Is we have more stories than the young folks, and we've made more mistakes. So we know where the potholes are, right? And other than that, that's it. That's why I can regale people, because I go, shit, I've been at it now for 30 years. I've got 30 years of stories. That's more than somebody's been in it for 5. So.
Yeah, great. Okay, Francisco, regards. Will we see the Sam and Twitch characters again soon? Thank you.
Yeah. The answer, Sam and Twitch, for those who don't know, are two detectives that were in issue number 1 of Spawn and have been around and have had their own book off and on. They're sort of a cool detectives. The answer is yes. Both on a comic book level, I have 8 issues.
Wow.
I know this seems weird. I have 8 issues that are sitting ready to go of the next Sam and Twitch story. And the thing that's really interesting about the COVID situation is that with Hollywood being shut down, you can get people that you otherwise wouldn't get on the phone, creative people. And so we're pushing a lot of these ideas up the hill, and Sam and Twitch is one of the ones that's got a lot of momentum on it currently right now. So hopefully we'll be able to make some announcement in the near future about it.
That's great to hear, man. Cool. All right. Let's see here. Beware a Ninja. Hey, Todd. Any chance we may see a McFarlane Marvel Artist Edition book? Thanks. Huh.
You'd have to ask Marvel. So
I'll make a call.
Marvel controls the Marvel stuff. So I don't know how that's a question for Joe, actually.
Yeah, well, I'm going to make a phone call.
I've seen some of the books where it's like they collect some of the McFarlane Spider-Mans or whatever. So, you guys do it from time to time. So I assume if it makes sense, Marvel will continue to do those kinds of groupings.
Yeah. So let's see here. I got 2 questions from David Da Silva, big fan. Can Mr. McFarlane say something about the Spawn movie with Blumhouse? And will there be a new Spawn animated series in the future?
Yeah, so let's take the second one first. Coincidentally, I was having a conversation about the animation yesterday with a pretty big animation house. So those those topics are heating up. I know that people are saying that, Todd, you talk a lot about the movie and the Hollywood stuff, and nothing's really happening. That's not true, right? Especially now with production being shut down. I can tell you right now there is momentum going on Spawn, the movie, and I'm not just saying it from my end. I'm saying that the things you need to do to eventually get to the point where you're going to get into production once COVID allows us to get into production, all those things are going on right now, and we're adding talent, big talent that we haven't announced yet. I wish I could, but I can't. So the Spawn movie is not a casualty right now. It's actually we're moving as much as we can, given that there's no production. So when will we be in production? I don't know. That's still an unknown. But all the steps you need to take to get there are being done currently behind the curtains.
Right. So. And people forget that the Spawn animated, we have to say your face. Spawn animated, you won an Emmy for that. I mean, the look of that show is 2 Emmys. I'm sorry. 2 Emmys. I feel shamed now. But also, you won Grammys, Todd. You've won a Grammy for music videos, have you not?
Yeah. The first music video I directed was with Pearl Jam, and we got nominated for a Grammy. I went, wow, that's easy. You just do it and you get nominated for a Grammy. We lost that year to Madonna. So I'm going, no, okay, that's okay. Right. And then then I think the next year, a year and a half later, we did something with Korn, a band called Korn, Freak on a Leash. And it was like this half animation, half real. I was in charge of the animation. The people in the middle were the ones that ended up going and doing, Little Miss Sunshine. And that one won. That one won the Grammy. So right. Look, I know it drives my wife crazy because she's a very skilled pianist, and I can't read a lick of music. I don't know how to. I don't play an instrument. I don't do whatever. And I've got a Grammy. Right. Right. This is those examples that this is what I hope that people take away sometimes when I have a conversation. A, I'm dumb, but I'm tenacious, and B, that there are always back doors to all of this. So how does a guy who doesn't know anything about music, can't read music, doesn't play an instrument, win a Grammy? You just find another route, and the route in this case was I helped direct a music video. I let everybody else be the musicians. I just happened to be sort of part of the puzzle. Right. So you don't. If you want to work in Hollywood, you don't have to be the actor or the actress. You can be 2,500 other people. Just sit and watch the credits at the end of any movie. That's all the jobs that are available that you can then say you're working in Hollywood, right? So stop limiting yourself that you have to do the one job, which is I've got to be in front of the camera. There are 100 that are behind the camera. I just happen to have one of those. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, my road to Marvel has actually then opened up tons of roads where I worked in industries that I had no idea I was ever going to have an opportunity to work with, but working. But anyway, let's see. I had no idea I was going to be in toys.
Yeah,
that was just a byproduct of being in comic books.
And that's actually another great part of the documentary when you start talking about how that one road led to the other. And it was just frustration with the way that something was happening with Mattel. You know what I mean? And you said, I'll do it myself. So let's see, Jaden.
Joe, before we go, if I could do, it's not even a plug, it's just a factual thing. If people want to understand even more of the sort of the business progression of my career, even more in depth than what was in the documentary, which is the documentary is on YouTube, so you don't even have to have sci-fi. You can go on YouTube and get the documentary. There was another one that I did. It was called Blueprint, and it's actually a business channel. And they usually go to CEOs, and so they happen to come. They thought what I did. If anybody's sort of interested on like what happens if you want to start up your own business, forget comic books or toys, just starting up your own business. If you go to Blueprint McFarlane, then that interview comes up. It's about 40 minutes. I think that one is way more compelling to see whether you have the mentality to be an entrepreneur. So I recommend that one. If
definitely check it out.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so Jaden Marvel, as someone who has worked on Venom and Spawn comics for many years, what do you think the most inherent characteristics of comic book characters when brought from page to screen?
Oh man, that's a tough one, Joe. I know I now understand that each medium has its own set of rules that make sense, that you have to at times bend the original material to make it work. I mean, remember, I'm going to age myself. Remember the original Batman when his costume went all black,
Yeah.
right? And everybody in comic books had a heart attack, but it looked cool because him being dressed as Adam West in the original Batman wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
So they had to come up with something that felt a little more armor and a little more compelling for somebody who didn't have any superpowers. So there are these decisions that have to be made, and it will never be a literal translation. Actually, I hope it's not a literal translation because I can just go and buy it. I mean, I have to say I wasn't a fan of the Sin City movie because I've read that book. There was no surprises to me. There was nothing new to it. It was a literal translation of what I already knew in my head. I'd rather see somebody attempt something, good, bad, or indifferent. At least they attempted it. So I think there are some difficulties. For me, and I've said it before, the transition of Venom is two things to me. If they put me in charge, name's Todd, only rhymes with God, is I would make him big and I'd make him a monster, right? And those would be my two driving forces. I didn't think they did that in Spider-Man #3 movie when it was Topher Grace and he was, maybe 10 pounds heavier. But I thought at least in the last one, forget whether you like the story, forget whether you like all the plot elements. That's not me. I'm talking artistically. Venom was big and he looked like a monster, right? He's big and he's a monster. I still created him as a villain, so it's hard for me to get my head wrapped around that he's anything but, because I think you need your Doctor Dooms and you need your Magnetos and you need your Lex Luthors and your Kingpins, and I still think he's a magnificent bad guy. But to add one more, like when you're talking about, I think they added Spawn in there. Any character that I was doing, I don't know how you tackle it, Joe. I think about the silhouettes of every character to try and make them as different as possible. So Venom would be a big hulking guy hunched over like a gorilla, and then Spawn would be sort of this regal sort of guy with a big cape. So his shape's going to be way dramatic. And then Spider-Man is a little bit different. What gets a little bit more difficult is, what happens when you put Lantern next to Daredevil? They have about the same body type. So how do you differentiate those two, right? And that's where you start to come up with your artistic sort of tricks to say, this is, in my mind, this is that character and this is that the other character.
Got it. Cool. All right. So this question, Todd, you mentioned before the editors of Marvel despise your spaghetti webbing for Spider-Man. I love this. Did Stan Lee ever have a comment on them?
They didn't. So let's just be clear. They didn't despise it. It was that they're in any business, and comic books is a business. There's a status quo that exists.
Right.
And so I was walking in to a business that had this character 30 years, and this is how it was done, and I was breaking some of those sort of rules. And it wasn't that I don't think anybody ever said I don't like them. As a matter of fact, some actually said it's cool. That's not how they're drawn, right? So for me, I like I said, I had my artistic reasons for doing it. And I saw him, because I was around him talking to other artists, where he wasn't positive and encouraging people, where he would say, Todd, I've seen that Spider-Man and wow, that's got a lot of energy. Keep it up, young man. And he sort of spoke in those terms, right? And he was always saying like, go, 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 because he was aware of when people were doing the status quo and just repeating his stories ad nauseum. And he wanted people to keep expanding and pushing the boundaries. So Stan was, from everything I saw and heard in my 20, 30 years that I was close to him, everything was positive. I never heard him ever say, in my day, that's not how we did it. I never heard that come from his mouth once.
Yeah, isn't that the thing, right? I mean, if you hang around Stan long enough, and if you listen and you watch, there's so many lessons that you could learn just in the way that he handled himself with fans, with other creators. I remember always taking away from him, because you'd hear the contrary later on from other creators, where they would sit there and go, especially you guys, right? The guys that spawned the whole image revolution. There was that previous generation where there were some creators like, it's that they're not doing it the right way. The right way was when our generation. Stan was never ever like that. I had never ever heard Stan say that's not the way it's done. He was so open, and it just instilled in me, I never want to be that get out of my, hey, you kids, get off my lawn guy.
Lawn guy, right?
Yeah, you never want to be
right.
that, because you know what all you do is you shut yourself off to something that you could bring into your own art and continue being as vibrant as you possibly could be, given the skill set that you get, and that's something that Stan, I took away from Stan all the time, because he never, ever, I never heard that, hey, you kids, get off my lawn stuff, He was just a miraculous guy, man, and I think we were all fortunate to be living. There you go.
There's one of my last visits with him when he was getting old, and I go, hey, Stan. And his eyesight wasn't very good. And I go, hey, Stan, you got to hold this sign. We're going to do our shtick. If we can't do our shtick on the stage anymore, right? Because the last time Stan stepped on a stage publicly was coincidentally, I live in Phoenix, was in Phoenix, Arizona. And if I knew that was going to be the last time that man was going to be on a stage in front of an audience, something different would have happened. My mindset would have been completely different, right?
Yeah.
The fans' mindset would have been completely different. But he walked off never to step on a stage ever again, right? It was the only time, too, truth be told, where he felt old to me. Up to that point, he was always this ball of energy that was staggering. And every time I look at that photo, because somebody took a couple photos of us walking sort of off doing a selfie, we always used to do selfies, that I just go, man, it should have been a bigger moment. It should have he just gave so much, and he was so encouraging, and even to the image guys, that we were going against his own company, and he still was like, you guys go, come on boys, keep going, you guys are great.
No, he just loved the medium, man, and he loved anybody that was in it, really.
He was Joe. Let me just say about Stan, there's no one person will take over the gulf, the void that is now there with Stan. Right. There's us, and some people go, oh, Todd, well, you and these other guys, and they list the other guys. You guys are the next guy. There's us. No. And then there was Stan. He was his own planet. He was his own galaxy. And so maybe 7 of us combined may be able to keep the sort of the ambassadorship of comic books going, but that dude that's Star Wars, right? It's like, you're not replicating it again. You can do your space movies, but there will never be another Star Wars that will match it. It's its own planet, and Stan was like I said, I keep saying that the words we're using to describe what Stan and his co-creators did will only grow over time. Right. We're going to understand how big, because it's all going to begat even new characters that maybe don't even exist today, Joe. And it's all going to just get bigger, and we're going to look back in 100, 200 years and go, oh my God, it literally spawned tens of thousands of characters, what he did. Right. Well, now we're only giving him credit for 1,000 characters. It's going to spawn tens of thousands of characters. So, it's humbling. It's humbling.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I've written this on social several times when people say, "Hey, who's next?" I'm like, there is no next Stan Lee. There was only one Stan Lee. The best any of us can do is, like you said, carry on the torch, carry on the lessons that we learned from him, right? And just pass it on, right, to other people. Like I said, we were very, very fortunate to live in a world where he existed and got to meet him and work with him on occasion. So I agree with you 100% on all this stuff. But the thing that Stan did, like when you talk about the characters that will be created decades from now, is that Stan and his co-creators shifted the paradigm. I've talked about this a little bit. Maybe you agree with this or not. Before Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and all those characters, the paradigm was, take a look. And I don't say this to denigrate any other character, because these characters are created in the eras that spawn them and that inspire them. So you take a character like Superman, right? Superman is young Kal-El, who is born on the planet Krypton, gets jettisoned from the planet Krypton, when it's destroyed, crash lands on planet Earth, is adopted by Ma and Pa Kent, and becomes Clark Kent, although he is really Kal-El, right? And Clark Kent then becomes Superman. So the paradigm there is that Clark Kent is a facade. Superman, Kal-El, is the actual character, right? So Superman, in order to live amongst us, has to wear a mask, which is Clark. Then you have young Bruce Wayne walks out of a movie theater. His parents get shot in front of him by a criminal, and that day Batman is born, right? And Batman then trains himself and becomes this great hero, who then uses Bruce Wayne as a mask, as a facade, to really facilitate the Batman. What Stan did was he took that and shifted it, and he created Peter Parker, and the mask was Spider-Man, and he did Tony Stark. The mask was Iron Man, and that alter ego became so important, and it shifted the paradigm to one that is more relatable, right, to all of us, like yourself, Todd, right? Your comic book Todd is way different. The mask you wear right now when we're doing this, and I wear this, is way different than when we turn this off and we go be with our families and we go be with our kids, right? That's a different face. When we go to work, there's a different mask. We all wear masks all throughout the day, and I think that's what Stan and Steve and Jack and all of those guys tapped into, which was the paradigm shift where the alter ego is what drives the story, but then the superhuman is that extra special mask that we put on,
Okay, Joe, I'm going to give you my reaction to it, but my computer's screaming at me saying I got 1%. I'm going to leave this screen for a minute. You keep chatting to your fans. I've got to go get a battery. I got to go get a charger, because we're gonna lose it. I'll be.
Yep. Okay. All right. So, I'm hearing Todd's earphones echoing. So anyway, guys, hope you're enjoying this so far. We're just going to wait for Todd to come back. So I will talk to you guys right now for a little bit. I got to, I'm having a blast here with Todd. I don't know if you guys are. I can't imagine you're not. So a little bit of background on Todd. We know the answers to these questions, especially if you watch documentary. But Todd again was one of the founding image partners. In 1992, he sold 1.7 million copies of Spawn, the best-selling independent comic of all time at that time. And for those of you who don't know, I'm going to answer these for Todd anyway. Todd created Spawn when he was in high school. Yes, I know a lot about Todd. I know a lot about Spawn. And Todd and I actually, we actually worked together on one piece. It was right after the Twin Towers had fallen at 9/11, and Marvel did a project called Heroes, which was this oversized magazine where we got people, comic creators from every company, all walks of life, to contribute pieces to this magazine. And I contacted Todd because I had drawn this piece. Let me see if I could find it here. I drawn this piece. I'm going to go, which window would it be here? Maybe in Todd's window here. Oh, Todd's back. Are you back?
Yeah.
You good? Hang on, Todd. I'm just going to show this piece that we did together.
Sure. No, I remember the piece.
Yeah. So I'd drawn this firefighter piece and asked Todd. I just took a shot in the dark and said, Todd, would you?
To the center of the screen so they can see it, because it's a pretty striking image.
Thank you. And Todd inked this baby up for me. Hang on, let's see here. There we go. And it was sort of the one and only time we really kind of worked together. But I was so happy.
Joe, it's actually more significant to me.
Okay.
It's the only page since I left in December of 1991, Marvel, that I've drawn anything that has not been printed at Image. It's the single page that is, I broke my rule of saying I'm only going to do my work for the company that I'm the president of. Mm-hmm. This is the only page. But I thought obviously that the moment demanded that we put those sort of silly things to the side and do something a little more important. Whatever a comic book page can be considered important, but that was it for me. I just went, okay, Joe, I'm gonna break my streak. This is a single page.
Well, thank you, Todd. Just so you know, I've kept this page. It's framed. It's hanging in my home. Huh? Was that? Oh yeah.
You have? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, no, I would never give it away, sell it, or anything like that. So no, I have it.
Like I said, you've got literally the one piece that broke my Cal Ripken Jr. streak. So.
Well, I appreciate it. I don't know if you know this, because this is something that I didn't find out until I visited the 9/11 Memorial Museum, and it's an incredibly powerful and heartbreaking exhibit. I mean, it really. If you've never, so as I walk through and I get to the end of the exhibit, and you walk through the doors, there's this big glass display about, and I'm paraphrasing now, but it basically said, this is how other parts of New York answered the call and expressed themselves. And there, sitting in the display case, is the magazine, the Heroes magazine, just there, and it gave the credits and stuff like that. And I literally started bawling, because I was not expecting it. They didn't tell us it was going to be there. I took a photo of it. I sent it to Alex Ross, and I said, "Hey man, just so you know, your cover is exhibited there." But yeah, I mean, it was a poignant moment for me, and thank you so much for doing that, because again, it was we could talk about this for a whole other episode about what that time was like. So let's get back to some...
Right. So I'm going to answer your question, but let me just say something out loud that I think needs to be said. I think there's been a misinterpretation of my career, that I don't like Marvel, that I don't like the people, that because people say that all the time, and because I'll be at a show and they go, "Will you sign this book from Marvel?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm proud of everything that I did at Marvel.
Right.
I had a great time at my career at Marvel. I had some tremendous relationships and friendships at Marvel. I think they got great characters. What I'm just saying to people is that Marvel, to me, is like high school. It's great memories. It's great friends. It was a time in my life, but I don't plan on going back to high school either. It doesn't mean I hated high school. Right. It doesn't mean I hate the people at high school. It just means that I'm moving forward, and that Marvel and DC, drawing for them, are just something that are in the past. Perhaps I'll do some toys for Marvel. Perhaps we'll do a crossover someday. Who knows? Yeah. There are things that can happen. But will I become a freelancer for Marvel or DC? Like, no. The answer is no. And it's not out of spite or anger or rage. There was a little bit of that maybe at the beginning of, power to the people. But that's just my baseball competitiveness. And so I just want to say that somehow people think that I've got, as weird as it is, of all the founders, I was the most oblivious to what Marvel and DC were doing once we started Image. They would come up to me all the time saying, "Hey, did you see what Marvel and DC are doing?" "No, I'm doing this book called Spawn." Like I had my head down. I don't really care about how fast anybody else is running in the race. I just have to run as fast as I personally can myself, right? Yeah. So that was my book, Spawn. So I'm proud of everything that I did at Marvel. On some levels, I wish I could have done it longer, but I just wasn't wired to get pushed back, so I just had to leave. Some people maybe would have only lasted half as long as me, and some would have lasted 5 times longer than me. We're all personalities, and my
Yeah. But wait, I'm going to interrupt you, because the other thing is, it's reciprocal too. I mean, we call you all the time. We try to tempt you, dangle some carrots, and like, "Hey, Todd, what can we do together?" So there's a lot of love for you at Marvel as well. I mean, I can't speak for, that's the thing. As a company at Marvel, people are like, "Well, Marvel was angry at Todd back in 1992. Those people are long gone, man. They're not there anymore. Whoever was angry at Todd. But anyway, so go.
Me being Todd. All right. So there's no rule here. I just have made these rules. I don't drink alcohol. It's not that I can't. I just made a rule when I was a kid. I'm not going to drink alcohol, and I've stuck by it. This is a piece I don't think people understand. Not only am I Todd the freelancer, I'm Todd the president of Image Comics. And Image Comics, as the president of Image Comics, I'm a direct competitor to both Marvel and DC, basically anybody who puts out comic books. So they're my direct competition. In normal business, you don't get to moonlight for your competitor. Like if you're the CEO of Ford Motor Company, you don't get to basically do any work for Dodge. Not only shouldn't you do that, but it's actually illegal in some cases. And so every time I get that phone call from Marvel, and I get it all the time, every time there's a new editor, they come and they go, hey, you want to do a Venom cover? Todd the freelancer says yes every time.
Right.
Are you kidding? I would kill to do Venom. I think it'd be super awesome, and I'm biting at it. It's Todd, the president of Image, that I can't get past, and I just go, if I can draw a page today, and it's going to look really good, and I don't give it to the company that I'm the president of, why? And that's the piece. Now, let me just say, none of my other Image partners had that same conflict because they've all been able to move back and forth over the years. I'm the only guy that's super militant and maybe crazy about it. But now that I'm 28 years into it and I haven't done it other than that sole page that I thought doesn't count because, again, it was a dramatic moment. I've kept it for 28 years, that rule, and I'm probably going to keep it for another 28 years. The only way I break it is if Spawn's attached. So is there a possibility of a Spawn Spider-Man? Sure. Is there a possibility of a Spawn Superman? Sure. But there has to be Spawn attached to it.
Sure.
Because then I'm bringing what it is that I do, and then we're both getting something out of it. But anyway. Cool.
All right. So you're going to answer the paradigm question, the shift.
Okay. So I disagree with you.
Okay.
Okay. And probably it's because I'm simple-minded and you're way smarter and more intelligent than I am. I've heard plenty of people give the conversations that you just gave. I've heard artists, or writers especially, articulate it in almost PhD fashion. I've even heard from time to time Stan Lee do it plenty of times too. I disagree with it, and here's why. It doesn't explain, because the whole thing about Peter Parker, that they'll sit there and say, wow, he's just like you and I, and it's just normal guys, and we can relate, and we can relate, and we can relate. That doesn't apply to Bruce Wayne. So here's a guy who makes $1 gazillion. He lives in a mansion. He could date supermodels, and he doesn't give a shit about any of it. He just wants to go scare bad guys. The thing that's consistent to me, which is why I'm going to push back a little bit, the thing that and nobody's going to argue Batman isn't popular. That the thing that makes Spider-Man and Batman popular is that they're cool, and never ever underestimate that word. I have made an entire career and built businesses on that one single word: make it cool. So does Batman look cool with that big cape and looks like a big sort of monster flying? Yes, that's why I buy Batman. And would I like to crawl up and down walls and spin on a web? Yes, I would. And the Peter Parker and the Bruce Wayne parts of it, we got to make sure there's enough in there. But Peter Parker being a high school dropout kid who can't pay the rent and a billionaire, those are so far apart from each other, and yet we relate to both of them. Why? Because when they got the costume on, they're both fun to look at and watch their movement and their actions and everything else on it. So
yeah, I mean, I would argue that Batman is possibly the exception to the rule, in some cases. But I think also what happens, we could talk about this forever, so I don't want to take up all our fans' times here. But I think what also happens with Batman is that there is a wish fulfillment of what it is that Batman does, which is that sort of that vigilante justice where he takes care of the obvious bad guys, where the law necessarily doesn't know how to handle them. There's a lot of that stuff that goes on there too. But there's no question the costume is
cool. 1,000 miles an hour. I'm 8 years old. What kid doesn't want to run 1,000 miles an hour? Right? But he's in a lab in between that. That was like.
But again, this is my issue with some of those characters. If the alter egos were that much more interesting, you might have something there. But again, conversation for another day. We could hash this out over dinner sometime.
Joe, you've heard me. I think I even did it on the documentary.
Yeah.
What made my artwork was that I thought Marvel was doing Spider-Man.
Yeah, right? No, I remember that. I remember hearing that. Yeah.
And I did Spider-Man. I was less concerned about the man, which is why I didn't care about the anatomy when he was swinging. Right? It's impossible. Those poses are, let me just tell everybody, are physically impossible poses. What they are is super cool to look at on a page.
Yes.
Right? So, because we're in the flamboyant business. We're in Broadway. Come on, this is comic books. We're in the action movie stuff.
Sure.
Like, come on, we've got. If you don't have that piece, it doesn't matter how good the character are. Here's my bias. I'm going to give you another bias. I think, I don't know where you stand on this. I think that between writers and artists, the artist is more important.
Okay.
And here's why I say it. In a perfect world, it's 51-49, but it's never 50-50. And here's why. I have never seen anybody buy a comic book and went, cover sucks, colors are horrible, artwork looks like my mom drew it, I'm going to flip it, I'm going to flip through it, oh my God. Let me read the balloons though. Let me see. Oh my gosh, Shakespeare wrote this. Oh my gosh, you know what? I'm going to buy this book because those balloons are really cool. Who cares that my dog might have drawn it? I'm going to buy that. I've never heard that in my life. Here's what I have heard. Oh my God, look at that cover. Holy heck, look at those pages. And then you take it home and you go, the story is a little bit flat. I can sell Michelangelo drawing a comic book written by my mom better than I can do Shakespeare doing a book drawn by my dog. And it doesn't diminish anybody's skills. I'm just saying we have to acknowledge that it's a visual medium, and that if the visual part isn't there, I don't think it matters how good the writing is in the long run. People won't go for the ride. So viva to the artist. I think we're 51%. So,
okay.
Anyway, that's
as an artist, I actually disagree with you. But again, we'll get into and I think it has to.
That's a panel another day. So.
Yeah, because I think it also has to do with the era, like when I took over as editor in chief, right? The era where you guys at the Image World were at the heyday, right? It was all about the art. There was a lot of collectors jumping in, and we had to sort of rebuild when we came into Marvel and find what was sustainable, And we found that story was driving the sustainability, the return customer, because we couldn't find those speculators anymore. We couldn't find those collectors anymore. So there was if I had to weigh between at that time, right? Now times change. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it could flip again, right? So during that time, I realized that if I had an amazing, blow you out of the water artist on a particular book, but the story was flat, that book would sell, the first issue would spike, and then it would just, continue to just, the attrition would be horrible because nobody wanted to come back. They wanted to read stories at this point. If I had a great writer, and crappy art will destroy anything, Todd. We know this, right? Just like crappy lettering will destroy But if I had a tremendous writer and an artist that was not necessarily Todd MCFarlane, but was, a level or two below, that book would sell really well and sustain. Yep. Because we were now in a reader's market, But these things change. It's all cyclical.
I agree, Joe. I'm just talking about the extremes. I'm talking about the extreme of, like you're saying, bad art, bad writing, right?
Dude, how many times have you seen sample pages and somebody letters their own page? You could have the lettering could destroy anything, So yeah.
Anyways, this is a debate. I agree. So from an editor,
you've done this debate before.
Yeah, right. But
shirtless.
Here's the thing. Yes, I have. Here's the thing, Joe, is that you guys went to full script. I think you did a disservice to art. I think you did a disservice to artists, right? Because I am now having to retrain artists to come on and do the Spawn book that don't know how to do storytelling because they've been spoon-fed, and they don't know how to do page layout because they're being spoon-fed by the writer. Do you think for 1 second Spider-Man would have looked like Spider-Man if the writer told me what to draw? You think he would have said, Todd, you know what? I think you need to put him in this funky pose, and I think you need to come up with this cool webbing, and I think you need to go out to these things, and I think you need to make this a big panel, and I think, no, there's no writer that exists that I've seen in my 30 years that can think like Greg Capullo or John Romita Jr. or the Kubrick brothers or Jim Lee or Mark Silvestri. There's nobody that can think like that. And it's not an accident that when DC does a panel of the Masters, that every one of those people up on the panel, a bunch of the people I just talked to you about, all grew up working from plots, not full scripts, right? Because I remember when somebody told me at a San Diego convention, I was sitting there horrified. Somebody said they do full script, and I looked at the writers going, that's ridiculous. And they went, no, we all do it. And it was the moment, I'll never forget, that I went, what? You're saying this is how much I had my head down doing Spawn.
Right.
I didn't know that the whole industry had transitioned into full scripts. And I'm going, so you're saying, I just want to be clear, you're saying that if I go back to Marvel tomorrow and I go back to DC and they got a 24-year-old kid writing that book, that kid is going to tell me how to draw my pages? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How are you going to get the next Todd, the next Greg, the next Jim if you don't let them basically figure it out and skin their knees visually on their own? How do you create those people, right? And if you look at the history, and this is my frustration, Joe, why are old men, myself included, I'm an old dude, why am I relevant still? I'm pushing 60 now, not 50, 60. Why am I relevant? Why is Jim Lee relevant? Why is Greg Capullo relevant? Why is Frank Miller and the Kubricks relevant? We're old men, right? When I came into the industry, Joe, I was going against John Byrne and George Perez, and they were 10 years older than me, and I thought they were old men. The 25-year-old Todd who said, hey, I would have gone at, like, what are you talking about? I would have been embarrassed if I couldn't take the 50-year-old down. I don't get why we haven't been knocked from our perches, and there's not the new wave that now should be there. We've skipped it. We've skipped a generation. Like, I don't get it. I don't get. And part of it is because we got a lot of cover artists, and we don't got a lot of people doing monthly comic books, and sadly, Joe, from my perspective, that full script, I think, is holding back some people. They don't even know they're being held back. But anyway, there's my rant. Next question.
Well, you know what? Just to touch on that, one of the things that because you are talking about, when you talk about the Silvestris and the Jim Lees, you're talking about rarefied air with a lot of these guys, right? And
right, but we weren't rarefied.
No, you weren't. You weren't. And by the way, DC
keep saying somebody should come on. When Todd McFarlane left Spider-Man, the next kid should have come along and they should have said, do whatever you want because you may be 10 times better than Todd, instead of saying, hey, we want you to look like Todd, because that's what they were telling me. We want you to look like Romita.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you know the next person isn't going to be spectacular on their own, but you're never going to know unless you give them the chance? Yeah,
but there's stuff like that. I remember when I was breaking at Marvel and you guys had left, the push was, if you don't draw like Todd, or if you don't draw like Jim, you're not going to get on an X book. And I didn't draw like Jim, but I managed to get on an X book. But so that kind of pressure is always there. But
I never did an X book, just for the record.
Right. Well, you didn't need to.
No, that's what I'm saying. You don't write. You didn't. I didn't have to take that path. That was the easy path. That was the easy path. I keep saying people should do what Frank Miller did with Daredevil. Mm-hmm. Take a book that nobody cared about. It was bi-monthly at that point.
Yeah.
Nobody was paying attention to it. Nobody remembers who the artist was before Frank. And then he just did something different.
Yeah.
I'm not saying better or worse. We'll leave that to everybody individually. He did something different.
Yeah.
And it was like, and all of a sudden I'm going, I actually care about Daredevil and I care about Bullseye? What are you talking about, Bullseye? He's a silly character. And he made him relevant, and I go, wow. And I've always encouraged people, you don't want to follow Jim Lee on the X-Men or John Byrne on the X-Men or Greg Capullo on Batman. That's a suicide mission. You want to go and do that book that nobody cares about, that actually you can do something different that nobody's seen, and that's going to get attention. The other one is like, you're just going to be a bad imitation of what was there before. And if anything, people are going to go, when's Jim Lee coming back? Or when's Greg coming back? Like,
Right.
No. There's too many characters you can make your mark on that aren't the top selling book.
Yeah, that's why
I'm proof of it.
Yeah, when they offered me an X-Men book, I looked at I said, you want, give me X Factor. It's the lowest selling one, but Peter David's writing, and I like Peter David's writing. So I did that for a little bit, and then just moved on. But it was the same thing with Marvel Knights. Give us the lower tier characters that are canceled that nobody cares about. Because there's nothing but upside at that point, right? Yeah. You just make your mark on that stuff.
Okay. Some more questions. Let's get to the fans.
Let's go. Hang on a second.
I've got Joe. I've got about 10 more minutes, and I got to jump on another call.
All right, man. Let's see what we got here. All right, we'll skip to this one. Todd.
What?
Is this a good deal? It's on eBay. Your yearbook.
Somebody showed me. It's one of those that buy it now. They have it way too high priced.
It's $390 some odd right now, Todd. What are we doing? Should I get this?
Yeah.
You gonna sign it for me?
Yeah. So there's Todd. There's the Todd that invented Spawn right there.
There you go. Look at that handsome devil there.
Yeah, long swoopy hair. Yeah, that was it. That's every now and then somebody sends me a link to something silly.
All right. I experienced the Todd grip when shaking hands with him some 25 years ago in Paris. Do you still have the Todd grip, Todd?
It's not. It's interesting. A couple of people have said that to me. They go, "Wow, that's a strong grip." It's not an intentional strong grip. I mean, I'm not built like John Romita Jr. or anything like that. It's just a firm grip. I don't like shaking hands with somebody who's sort of, you feel like it's a dish rag, right?
Yep.
So when somebody sort of squeezes back a little bit, I comment back to them, that fan. I go, man, that's a good handshake. You keep that up, right?
That's it.
Because it's just there's a moment, you share a moment of like, man, that's good, right? We like, I like you. So it's not trying to show that I'm strong or I'm superior. I'm not. It's just firm. So when I go in, I squeeze just a little bit, and if you squeeze back, then we're even.
All right. Hey, Todd, how you doing, what character haven't you drawn that you want to? Would you want to do another Batman book? That was killer artwork. This is from Michael Grant. So this is fantasy football stuff. Obviously, you're not going to, Todd, but what character would you like to do if you were free to do this?
So let's just stay with it. That I've never drawn before.
Yeah, let's take a never drawn character.
Thor.
Thor. That would be awesome. Okay.
And here's why I say it, Joe, because he just has so much fun stuff to draw, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not thinking about it because Thor's a thunder god, whatever. I'll leave that to the writer. He's got the cape. I like capes, as you know. He's got the long hair, so the long hair can be all over. He's got the wings, he's got the cool chain mail. Yeah. He's got that hammer. He's got lightning. I mean, there's like 6 or 7 elements that I know that I could figure out how to have like a lot of fun with that guy.
Yeah. Okay, let's see here. From Todd Matthew. Challenge Todd again to the Spider-Man Spawn crossover. Do you remember this, Todd? When my first week or two as editor-in-chief, I took a page right out of your playbook, man. It was. I remember when you did the Peter David debate, right? We talked about you being shirtless. So I figured, you know what? This is the kind of thing like you go to jail and you punch the biggest guy in the nose and try to get somebody's attention. So I figured, let me just put this out there. I mean, you ignored me like the peon that I was. But I put that out there. I said, hey, Todd, I'll do a Spawn, you do a Spider-Man, and I don't know. There you go. So that's still out there, man. If you want to do it someday,
Yeah. So let me just tell you how this is going to work, right? Just I like you, Joe, and I like a lot of people, but let me tell you how.
Wait, hang on. Before you go there, hang on. Put that down for a second. I want you to see this, okay? Because this also came in with respect to that. Hang on. We got one of Todd and Joe going to do Spider-Man Spawn. There's some more Todd doing Spider-Man, some more Todd doing Spider-Man. Hey, this is how much people would pay for Todd doing Spider-Man Spawn, Spider-Man Spawn, Spider-Man Spawn, Spider-Man Spawn, Spider-Man Spawn, Spider-Man Spawn. All right, so that's just a little. I'm not even going to get into all these right now because they're all basically saying the same thing, Todd. They want to see some Spider-Man, they want to see some Spawn. Possibly you and I, or someone better than me, along with you. So now, go ahead, break the fans' hearts. I leave it to you. Go ahead.
No, I'm not going to break their heart. I'm going to tease them.
Okay.
Here would be my process of it. If McFarlane was to come back and do any work at Marvel, what's the character do we think that the fans want to see him draw? The answer is, I think, obvious. It's Spider-Man, right? They've been waiting a long time. They've been waiting for decades, some of them, more than that, almost 3 decades now, to go, oh my God,
Yeah.
I want to see Spider-Man. I mean, that was the first time I'd ever done those two characters on the same page when I was drawing it. I went, have I ever done this before? And it hit me that's like, no. So they're going to want to see a Spider-Man, Joe, not your Spider-Man. They're going to want to see the return of Todd after 30 years Spider-Man, right? And so then I go, okay, well, even if we were tag team, and then I got to get somebody who knows how to draw a Spawn. And then I go through my Rolodex and I go, who do I know that can draw a Spawn? And I'm like, God, that would be me again, right? So I go, okay, I can draw both those guys. And then I go, okay, now we got to do the clown. Okay, I invented the clown. Okay, we put him in there. And who's going to be the bad guy? I got to have some Venom in there. Who could I get that drawn Venom? Maybe even created it. Oh, that would be me again. And then I go, man, now I got to find a writer. Who do I know has done Spider-Man and Spawn and written both of those before in the past? And it keeps, unfortunately, and I'm not saying because I'm great or anything, I'm just saying that it keeps coming back to me that to do that crossover, if it ever happens, and I'm not saying it will, but if it ever comes to be, then I will write it, pencil it, and ink it.
Awesome.
Like that, it would be this Todd doing Spawn, Todd doing Spider-Man, and amalgamating those two careers into one spot, and stepping back and seeing if the fans care anything about it. If I was to do any other character other than Spider-Man, then Joe Todd, Greg Todd, Jim Lee Todd, all of that, like I go, that's perfect. Now I'll share the limelight with all of that, and it makes perfect sense. And I think it'd be super awesome. But Spawn Spidey, to me, has to be a McFarlane book, because I'm just saying, if I'm a 16-year-old fan, what would I want? I'd want that.
Dude,
so
that much less work for me. That's great.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. It's too much work for me, so that's sort of the delay of it. But if I ever do anything for Marvel, that's what it will be. It will be what I just talked about.
Awesome. Well, there you go, folks. You've heard it from Todd. So let's see here. Let's go back a few more. We got a limited amount of time here. Hi, Todd. Any chance we may see a McFarlane? Oh, wait, we did this already. Hang on. Nope, did these already too. Sorry, Todd. Hold on. Oh, okay. I know where I am. Good question here. I probably know what Todd will say, but I'm curious about his opinion about people doing webcomics and self-publishing through crowdsourcing over trying to get comic picked up by a comic company.
Here's what I would say. There's a sort of couple cliches. There's a beggars and a choosers. If you can't find somebody to publish your books, and you've tried and made an effort, and you still have a voice that you want to get across visually or storytelling or whatever, you just have to basically find the outlets yourself, right? We talked about how do you get a Grammy? You just find the back door. If nobody will publish your books and you've got a website and you can put a scan of your artwork and put it up and you can get readers, good on you. It's a start, right? It's way, way, way better than doing nothing, right? If you do nothing, your chances of succeeding is 0. I guarantee it, 100% 0. So do whatever you got to do. That was my attitude. I begged, borrowed, and steal everything that I could. And if they still said no, I said, well, then I'm going to go and do it on my own. I was ready to publish my own Spawn comic book when I was 17 if nobody gave me a chance once I got out of college. So yes, I encourage everybody, find your outlets, and then if you're not getting the audience, still show it to me, right? I find artists on Instagram that are just basically sending it to their family. I go, oh my gosh, that's good. You want to do some artwork, right? And so you might get.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, great question here from Pablo Dura. Does Todd think Image Comics could happen today the way it happened in the 90s?
Here every day when I try to talk to people about it, when I'm up on stage, is like, well, that was a different time and that's how it worked, and that's bullshit.
Yeah,
it's bullshit. That's like saying, why would I want to be a baseball player? Babe Ruth has already come.
Yeah,
it's Then Joe DiMaggio comes. Then Mickey Mantle comes. Now we got Aaron Judge, and that's just the Yankees, right? There's always the Robert Kirkman in The Walking Dead. There's always going to be the new somebody in music and TV and sports and art. And if you basically talk yourself out of it, you will not be that person. I guarantee it. It's a 0% chance. So somebody else will come because the old people are going to age out, and then they're going to have to replace us, and whoever made the effort. So will it be as big and significant? I don't know, but you're not going to know unless you make the effort. And by not making the effort, I guarantee you, you will never be as big as Image Comic Books ever. So I have these two talks. One is the dad saying, of course you can, of course you can, of course you can. And then the other one is Todd, the CEO, that says, I hope you don't, because I never have to compete with you. Make my life easy. Make it, talk yourself out of it, because then I don't have to be as good as you someday.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, and I find people are way too often are more prone to tell me why something can't happen, as opposed to telling me why can't it. Give me the
I'm delusional.
Can't.
I am delusional. Yeah. I think I can do it all.
Yeah.
Right?
So.
What are you talking about? Joe, I haven't even begun one of my careers yet. I'm going to direct a feature film called Spawn. I haven't even begun a career yet. If you people think, oh my God, Todd, you've had such a charmed life. I haven't even begun one of my careers.
Yeah.
And I'm pushing 60, and I haven't even begun yet.
Yeah. Oh, that's the way to do it, man. All right, here we go. Question for both of us.
And then I got to.
Oh wait, we got last question. Then here, I like this one. Hang on, I'm gonna go here. From Mark Bourne, where do you see Spawn in say 50 years beyond your life? Not that you're going anywhere.
So, could I do something like Walt Disney did? Not in terms of scale, not in terms of popularity, but that you could create a character, you could die, and that character still is relevant. And we've seen it now with Superman and Batman, and now with Stan and Jack Kirby and Dick Ayers and all those guys, Gene Colan, all gone. They put characters that are still relevant. And if you can do that, that's the equivalent of your creative children. You hope that when you have your own flesh and blood children, that you will die, they will live, and that they will prosper more than you ever did and make a bigger impact than you ever did. So I'm hoping that when I die, there will still be people on the planet that go, hey, when's that next issue or next comic or next movie or next toy of Spawn coming out? I hope that continues.
Yeah, awesome, man. So Todd, thank you, brother. Thank you for giving us so much time. I hope the fans enjoyed it. I know I did as well. We could talk forever, and we probably will later on. So brother, I know you got to run. Thank you so much. Any parting words for the folks out there?
The greatest slogan that is out there, and I wish I had invented it myself, Nike, just do it. Yeah. Just do it. If you never shoot the ball towards the basket, you don't ever know if you can make it. And I know there are some impossible angles, but if you watch YouTube, you see that even those get made every now and then. If you never attempt it, it's never going to happen. I just was dumb enough to keep attempting over and over and over until one of those balls went through a bucket.
Yeah. What's the old saying, right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Yeah.
So, you know.
Todd, thank you, brother. I'm gonna let you go.
All right.
And all right, man. Thanks, brother. Be good. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that conversation with Todd. He's awesome, and we could have gone on forever. So without further ado, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to watch Storyboards tomorrow. And of course, we will be continued. And let's see, my graphic didn't come up. Oh yeah, we're gonna try Adam Kubert again. We really are. We've had tech issues twice. Hopefully on Monday we'll be good. So thank you again for watching. It's been the morning warm up. Love you guys. Stay safe during these times. Wear your mask. Okay.